Yogi Ramsuratkumar ki
Jai.
Sarvam Yogi Ramsuratkumar arpanamastu. It is with deep gratitude we shall offer our pranams at the lotus feet of Bhagwan for giving us this opportunity to be able to sing His name, His powerful name, in His powerful presence. The sanctum, sanctorum of Bhagwan, which is no small grace. Bhagwan had said, no single nama goes waste. Every nama counts. Every nama does its transforming work. Every nama pleases Him. Bhagwan often used to hear the stories of Sufi. He liked them very much. The Sufi order of Islam has ascetics like our sannyasis, and they have special practices. Here is a story that he liked, which has a great teaching lesson for all of us. The attitude of life, the attitude of gratitude to God. We know that the joys and sorrows of life repeat themselves in different forms, different ways, in different situations. How do we keep ourselves in balance? This is the story of a dervish, a Sufi ascetic, a Sufi sannyasi. He used to take yatras. He used to walk long distances to some places, like we have Padayatra. He lived what we call Iran today. It was Parasikam in those days. So he used to undertake long and hard journeys to distant places. And while going, there would be many experiences, a varieties of them. And he had been trained to take everything as a teaching for him, something to contemplate, something to learn from. Once, after such a hard journey, crossing the desert, he came to a village after such a hard journey, crossing the desert, he came to a village, and all that he could see was there, the hay field, the dry grass, and some scrubs. There was not much of greenery at all. So he understood this cattle, the main profession of those people, there was much less for agriculture, and this cattle must have been the wealth there. So he was very tired after this long journey, thirsty, tired. He wanted some place to rest for the night. He came across a passerby and asked him, in this village, the village name was Sandy Hills. He asked if there was a place for him to rest for the night. The passerby said, scratching his head, "We don't have such place in our village, but there is one person by name Shakir. He would willingly look after you. You have to find his place." And then he showed him the path. The name Shakir means the one who is ever grateful to God, no matter what happens. So this dervish, the ascetic, started to walk into the village. He came across a group of old men smoking their pipes. Again, he wanted to make sure that he was moving in the right direction. He asked them for the address of Shakir and inquired about him. They said, "Oh, Shakir is wealthy." Yes, he's even more wealthy than Haddad of the next village. You see, Shakir has more than 1,000 cattle. He's very rich. Haddad is living in a village 10 miles away from this village. So you can go to him. He is very hospitable. So the dervish was very happy to hear it. And then he found the ranch where Shakir lived. Yes, the wealth of this Shakir showed in everything about the place, the richness. And as soon as he presented himself at the doorstep of Shakir, Shakir was out with a very sweet smile, and with both hands extended, he took this dervish inside. He looked after him very well. He gave him food and drink and gave him a good place to rest in the night. And the dervish stayed there for 2 or 3 days. Not only he, Shakir, but also his wife and the daughters were very kind, loving, and looked after this dervish as though he was God. And after 3 days, the ascetic wanted to take leave of them. They even packed food and water for his further travel. So at the time of leaving, the dervish was all gratitude. He told Shakir, "Shakir, it's a fortune for people like me that you are here and rich, that you are able to look after us." Shakir smiled and said, "My friend, don't be carried away by appearances. Don't be fooled by appearances. This too shall pass. The dervish, after hearing this, he was a little confused. He did not know why Shakir was saying that. But then he thought, okay, there's a teaching in it. Let me contemplate on it later on. There is one practice with these dervish, these Sufi people. When they listen to something, some statements of wisdom, of course, naturally, questions would rush into our mind, but they are not indulged in that. Nor should they jump to conclusions immediately. They have to absorb it first, and then they should choose solitude, go into deep meditation, and in the silence of the meditation, the understanding, the truth of the wisdom would dawn spontaneously. So he told himself, okay, the questions came up. He said, no questions. Let me wait. And then he started to walk. He walked to several places, and it took him another 5 years before he returned to the village. Somehow, Shakir stayed on in his mind and his wisdom, though he did not quite understand what Shakir meant. After 5 years, he was drawn very naturally to that place. Now this time he walked into sandy hills, went straight to Shakir's place. But there was no Shakir. The sandy hills lived on without him. So he inquired, and they said there was a river, something like a canal, but it was always dry because the place was near the desert. But sometimes, on rare occasions, there would be floods. Some 3 years before, there was this flood in the river, and the house, cattle, everything was gone. He was left penniless. So those people of the village said, now Shakir is working, laboring under Haddad of the next village. You have to go there to find him. So he walked over to Haddad's place, and there was Shakir. His attire was very different now. He was in rags, and he was laboring and laboring. But then, when he saw the Sufi ascetic, there was the same smile on his face, the same kindness, the same love, and there was the same peace in his countenance. He said, my friend, please come. I'm so happy to see you. Please come. And then he took him to a small kutir, a hut. And his wife and the daughters were there, and they were equally loving. With the little food they had, they gave away everything to him. They saw to it that he was comfortable. And again he stayed on for 3 days. At the time of leaving, the dervish said to Shakir, Shakir, it is so sad that you have lost all your riches. I am very sorry about it. But you are very loving, you are still very peaceful. But I am very sorry about this state of yours now. How did it happen? And then Shakir said, okay, there was a flood. took away everything, cattle, my house, everything. Now I'm working under Haddad. I have no complaints, he said. I have no complaints. And my friend, let me tell you again, this too shall pass. This too will change. Don't be fooled by the appearances. Now the dervish again was wonderstruck. How could he say that? There's hardly any food for them to eat. It was obvious. And this man was working, slogging all through the day. And he seemed peaceful, loving. And so were his daughters and wife. How is this possible? Anyway, reluctantly he took leave of him and went about his yatras. And then he went to, those people used to make this annual pilgrimage to Mecca. They had to cross the desert of Saudi Arabia. So he finished all that, and 7 years had passed by then. So by the time he came, Shakir was no more. His daughters were all married, settled. No, I'm sorry. By the time he came back, this time he found Shakir was still living in Haddad's place, but he was very rich. Last time he was in rags, laboring under Haddad, and this time he found once again Shakir very rich. His daughters were all settled, and he had once again 1,000 cattle under him and so many people working under him. Of course, Shakir was very happy to see the dervish, and then he took him inside, gave him food, drink, and he stayed on for 3 days like before. And the dervish asked him, how come that you are rich now? He said that I worked very hard without any expectations. I worked very sincerely. Haddad had no sons or daughters, and he saw how I was laboring, how honest I was, how sincere in my work. He was all appreciation for that. So just before he died, he left everything to me, saying, you look after this, only you can look after it. So you see, once again, things have changed. And then he smiled and said to the dervish, but my friend, even this will change. This too shall pass. So that was once again food for contemplation. And the dervish left the place. And he was thinking, why is he saying that? Maybe once again he would lose his wealth, because this wealth has a way of coming in and going out. It seems to be the very nature of riches. And then once again he went on many pilgrimages, and he came back. Once again he was drawn to Shakir. Shakir was always on his mind at the back. Despite all his varied experiences in varied places, Shakir had taken a permanent place in his heart. So he was drawn to the place once again. And this time Shakir was gone. There was only his tomb. People pointed to the tomb. And the river. It was all by the side of the river. And in the tomb, there was this inscription, this too shall pass. Now this time the dervish sat before the tomb. He went into meditation. But again, he could not reach the depths. The meaning did not become clear to him still. Because they are not to contemplate. There are two types of meditation. One is just going deep into the silence or concentrate on one form or a mantra. The other is contemplation, deep contemplation of a concept or the truth of somebody until you make it your own truth. That you assimilate the idea into your entire being and it becomes your truth, your experience. So this time again he was trying. He said, Shakir, now you are only a stone. You are in a tomb. Now I want to understand the statement of your statement. And then he went into meditation, but the truth did not dawn on him. So again, he labored his way back to Iran. And then again, after a few years, he still had strength in the body to make his pilgrimage. And the only thought that came to him was the sandy hills where Shakir lived. He knew it was only a tomb, and still he was drawn to that because he had not found out the truth of Shakir's statement. So he walked all the way again. And this time, to his surprise, he found the tomb was gone. There was flood in the river, and the stone was dragged away. There was not even the stone, there was no tomb at all. And one look at it, in a flash, he understood the truth of his statement. You see, even the tomb is gone. It was inscribed, this too shall pass. And it did. So after the truth of the nature of the world dawned on him, he walked back all the way, went to Iran and settled down in one place. By now, he was getting old, which did not encourage him to take up other pilgrimages. See, he settled down in a place and he met those people who came in search of him and shared his wisdom with those people. The king of Iran, he was ruling the place, but he was getting tired. He was getting tired of it all, and suddenly he found himself losing his interest in the kingdom, losing his interest in everything. There was a counselor to him, an advisor. He wanted to present to the king a ring with a good inscription. The king said, that's okay, but I want such a inscription. When I am sad, just one look at it, I would become glad. And when I am so happy, I will look at it, then I would become sad. When I am glad, I should become sad. When I am sad, one look at it, I should become glad. I want such an inscription. And then the counselor, the advisor of the king, he searched, he brought so many people, and they had so many words of wisdom to tell the king, but the king was not satisfied. He said, no, I don't want your ring until you find an inscription that would meet my demands. And that's when the counselor heard about this dervish, the old dervish. So immediately he sent word to him saying that I have made an emerald ring for my king, but I want an inscription and I want a fitting statement. And then he stated the condition of the king, inviting the dervish to the palace. The dervish did not go to the palace, but he sent the statement. And as soon as the king ordered, he was not interested in the ring either, because he didn't get any inscription that he wanted. So he would not even look at it. He was still feeling very sad that he could not find anything at all that would cheer him up. And then very casually he turned and his eyes fell upon the inscription. And as soon as he saw the inscription, his face, the countenance changed. He was very happy. It made him very happy. And what could be the inscription except, "This too shall pass." What a beautiful story. The wisdom that all of us have to remember. And you have to remember this. Shakir, the name means ever grateful to God. The one who is ever grateful to God, no matter what happens. We saw some 2 days, 3 days back, the story of a woodcutter. How happy he was despite all the changes, the sorrows he had to go through in life. He was always thanking God. He was always happy. He was always contented. Now today again we see the Sufi dervish learning his lesson. So we should also learn with him this great lesson of life. Everything that which changes is called Maya. Everything about this life is Maya. Because every day something or the other changes in life. We may not be acutely aware of it, but everything. You become one day older, and there is some change or the other in life, in your everyday life. The joys and sorrows repeat themselves. So we have to remember that all these joys and sorrows, the changing Maya. Now our Bhagwan has given us a beautiful teaching. He says everything happens only by Father's will. And whatever happens is necessary for our spiritual growth. Father is perfect, and therefore whatever he gives us is perfect, and it is a blessing. Whatever life brings to you, be it a joy or sorrow, know that it comes from God, and therefore it's got to be a blessing. Our Bhagwan has said, whatever happens at any moment is the best that can happen to you at that moment. There is no better alternative. Do not think there is always a better alternative. There isn't. And Bhagwan also has taught us, in whatever circumstances our Divine Father keeps us, we should not only accept it, but be grateful to God for it. Because everything is a blessing, everything is progress. Like I used to say, when you climb up a mountain towards a peak, the peak is our aim. So as you climb, the very nature of the structure of the mountain, there are up slopes and down slopes. So sometimes you have to climb up and sometimes you have to come down. But remember, even while coming down, you are still towards a peak. So it is still progress. So Bhagwan always said, everything is progress. Everything is grace. Why? Everything happens only by God's will. And God is perfect. His leelas are perfect. And they happen because it's necessary for us. Necessary for what? for our spiritual growth. Why? The goal of life is God. The goal of life is not to become an engineer or a doctor. The goal of life is not even Nobel Prize. Everything about our life helps us, pushes us towards God. This push towards God is what we call progress. So we are journeying towards a peak. It's always an up climb and towards a peak. Now this is what our Bhagwan taught, and this Bhagwan is here right in front of us with his hand raised in benediction. Compassion incarnate that our Bhagwan is. We shall appeal to his boundless grace, beg him for his immediate divine intervention to uproot the panic from the hearts of people,